Everybody, Andrew Flushy here. I hope you can see me and hear me well. And I'm here to talk about some important topics that I think need to be discussed. Simply the rule of law and how our governors are playing into that, especially in this time of it's a crisis in America. My channel is normally focused on traffic law, but I'm actually hoping to try to expand that a little more to law in general. I'm a Virginia lawyer, as many of you know, and so that's where my expertise lies. I do traffic and DUI defense, but I want to expand the channel to talk about some things that are affecting your daily lives to different areas. And so I'm going to experiment with a Facebook Live here. I'm going to try to keep an eye on the chat. So if you have a question or a comment, feel free to drop it in the chat, and I'm going to try to keep an eye on that. And I estimate we'll probably go live for 10 or 15 minutes unless things get really excited, and then we might keep going for a little longer. So without further ado, let me kind of introduce the topic today. I was going to talk about phase three in Virginia. I'm here in Virginia, and we're supposed to enter phase three of the COVID-19 forward Virginia reopening plan tomorrow. And so I thought, well, wouldn't that be great? Let me look at phase three, all the regulations and what it might entail, and I'll talk about that and explain to people, how it might affect your business, depending on what kind of business you have, what phase three will look like. I sat down and tried to do that. The problem is today is June 30. Phase three is supposed to begin tomorrow, July 1st, and there is no executive order from Governor Northam that tells us that phase three is actually beginning and what do you actually have to do. There's literally no order for it. He said he's going to put us in phase three tomorrow, but we don't have actual written confirmation in ink saying that it's happening, unless I've missed it. Maybe I have. Feel free to drop a link and we'll read it together if I've missed the phase three order. So, as a lawyer, that's frustrating. Our job is to look at the law and court cases and see how that all goes together. But we don't actually don't have the phase three guidelines to be able to see what's allowed and not allowed. So how could I possibly advise a client or a business or my own business about what phase three might entail? So I sat down to try to look further on the governor's website to see what information is out there. And there's a phase three guideline document that has all sorts of information about phase three in it. And it's 43 pages. Actually, maybe I'm wrong. I'm sorry. It's 46 pages. So phase three, the guidelines, these aren't the actual executive order, but I'm assuming the executive order is going to link to or reference the guidelines for Forward Virginia. It's 46 pages. Just think about that for a minute. One man, one man has said businesses in Virginia, really everybody in Virginia, churches and all sorts of organizations in Virginia can do whatever you want to do pursuant to this 46 pages of guidelines. Now it's long because there's lots of specific guidelines for different organizations. So whether you're a swimming pool or a church or a summer camp or different things have different guidelines, but that frankly makes it even more confusing and complicated. And so that's what's going on. So I thought a little more about this, and I thought, well, why is one man in control of all this? And I'm not trying to be political here. I'm not trying to pick on Governor Northam. If we think about other states, we have 50 states in our union, and each governor in those states essentially is doing the same thing as Governor Northam. One person in each state is essentially determining what businesses can operate or not operate, and under what terms they can operate or not operate. One person. Now, the rule of law says that we normally in our republic here in the United States, most of our legislatures, we have like Virginia has a bicameral legislature. So you have the House, you have the Senate. They get together, they pass bills, they vote on bills. Once a bill is actually voted on, the governor has to actually enact it. He could veto it. You have a process of how things actually are done and how regulations are passed. I'm not a fan of a lot of the regulations that the legislature does pass. However, at least there's a process, and at least I have a representative in the House and I have a representative in the Senate. I get to vote on these people, and if they don't do what I think they should do, I can try to vote them out and I can try to run myself. There's a system and there's a process. And so that's the problem we have is that what we have now is we have one person in each state basically overriding that whole process, and it is completely destroying the rule of law in America. I see we have a comment. If the pages with writing at least 6 blank pages apart, I love it. That's awesome. I don't know how I can. I don't know how I can respond to the comment really without typing, and I don't want to distract myself too much, but I appreciate it. Um, so the rule of law is being threatened in America. In fact, it's been threatened in America for months now. So, what would the proponents of our system say? The proponents of the governors doing all this would say, well, this is a time of crisis. It's an emergency. We need to have a strong executive in each state who can protect the people in time of emergency. And frankly, I agree with that theory. If you read the Federalist Papers, the presidency of the United States, so our chief executive of the whole country, essentially, the anti federalists wanted to have a very weak executive. They were afraid of concentrating power in the hands of one person. So they wanted a weak executive. But the Federalists and our Constitution that was actually enacted has a very strong executive. Now it's gotten way stronger and more powerful and overpowering than even the founders ever thought it should be. However, I agree with the concept that you need someone who can act quickly in times of emergency. So if you think about war, if you think about maybe Pearl Harbor, right? We were being bombed, people were being murdered and slaughtered, surprise morning when Pearl Harbor happened. Things like that, you need someone who can react quickly, strongly, efficiently. And maybe there would be times where a legislature couldn't actually meet to respond, and certainly not respond quickly enough. Because if you think about trying to convene a legislature of hundreds of people, or at least a couple hundred people, it's hard to do, and you got to give people notice, and they got to have time to travel to the state house to do their job, or maybe the state house has been blown up and they can't travel to do their job. So I could agree that we need to have a strong executive to react in times of emergency. The problem is, how long has this emergency been going on at this point? The first shutdowns here in Virginia were on March 16th or March 17th, I believe. So it's been, well over 3 months now of shutdowns, and we're continuing this slow reopening that Governor Northam was doing. But it's been months and months. And in Virginia, at least, the legislature has met during that time. They came back to meet for their veto session. And they're actually planning another, I believe, August session to talk about police reform. So if the legislature can get together to do a veto session, and they can get together to do a police reform session, all while businesses are being closed and only certain things are being allowed, can't they get together and be the ones to decide what's going to be allowed and not allowed? Can't my representative and my senator actually go to the state house and do their job instead of having one person doing all that work? The other thing to think about is Texas. I'm a native Texan, and so I'm not trying to pick on the liberal governor. Texas has a conservative governor. But in Texas, just like everywhere else, lots of things were closed early on during the COVID-19 pandemic, including bars. So if you were a bar owner in Texas, one day you had a profitable business. Hopefully, it was profitable. But if you didn't know anything about the restaurant industry, my understanding is that it's a very thin profit margin. So even though you may be making it, you're not making it maybe greatly. You really rely on keeping open every day and keeping the system going. So one day you've got a profitable business bar in Texas. The next day, the governor, one person says, you got to close because there's a threat. Okay, so you close. Well, then eventually you're allowed to reopen by one person allowing you to reopen. But then the numbers start ticking up too much. And that one person again says, nope, never mind. You got to close your bar again. So not only did you maybe have to lay off people, but then you got to hire people back and resupply and everything. And then, you get shut back down again. And it's just crazy to think that one person in each state is able to do these things. That's not the rule of law that I think our founders intended when they set up our country. And I don't think anybody wants to really operate like that. Now we say, well, it's a time of crisis and it's an emergency, so we should allow this to happen. I personally don't agree that it's as big of a crisis as we're making it out to be. But secondly, in our day and age with our technology, even if we agree that there's a crisis that needs to be addressed, I don't agree that the legislators in each state couldn't be meeting to address the crisis properly. I think it's up to the legislatures to do their job, and instead of having the governors so powerful that they can do essentially whatever they want with no repercussion. Certainly people sue them, and there's different injunctions that are being sought to try to change things. But it certainly doesn't seem to be making really a dent. The governors seem to be doing whatever they want. In the name of COVID-19, they can do whatever they want. What's going to be the next crisis? What's going to be the next thing where governors can do whatever they want to try to change the rules, change what businesses can operate for maybe even a longer term? I was just reading a headline that Dr. Fauci says there's a new virus to be on the lookout for. It's not an imminent threat yet, but it's something they're kind of monitoring. It's essentially a new variation on the swine flu. So we're still dealing with COVID-19 emergency, and now Dr. Fauci is saying we're going to have a new virus on the horizon. Maybe, we don't know yet, but we're keeping an eye on it. So we're going to have to shut everything down again for that. And is one man or woman in each state going to be able to make those decisions? That's the point of this little discussion today, is that you need to make sure we really need to seize power back from the government in general, but also we need to restructure how that power is done. Letting our executives get way too powerful, way too powerful. And I think that applies at all levels, whether it's the city level, the state level, or the federal level. If you think back to all the protests that were happening and are still happening, like Fredericksburg City, where I'm live in the county next door in Spotsylvania, but Fredericksburg City had some pretty vigorous protesters, and they issued a curfew. Well, that curfew wasn't issued by the city council or the mayor even. It was issued by the city manager, a person who's not even elected. This person's literally not voted on by anyone. The city council hires a city manager. He's a paid employee of the city who basically said, if you live in Fredericksburg City, you cannot be out after, I think maybe it was 8 p.m. He's ordering people to stay in their homes, and the citizens have no recourse to this person. There's no way they can vote him out of office. He's just a hired employee. Now they can vote out the councilors, the city council people who hired him, but that's a much longer way to have recourse when you're aggrieved. So I encourage everyone to think about the rule of law, think about how that matters, think about concentrating too much power into one hand or one set of hands, especially when we're talking, one person who can make drastic decisions that affect our way of life. Maybe you agree with the shutdowns, maybe you don't. That's not really the point of the video. The point of today's discussion is simply to highlight that one person in every state is making these decisions, and one person in a lot of counties is making very important decisions that affect our daily lives. And do you want that to happen? As I mentioned at the top of the video, I'm kind of trying to broaden the focus of the channel a little bit. So I welcome your feedback. I welcome your comments and suggestions of things you might like to see covered. I want to stick to the law because I'm a lawyer, and that's the skills I have to bring to the discussion. But I think we can maybe have some good discussions, and I would encourage people to hit me up with some suggestions in the comments, or you can find me on Twitter. I'm @Flushy on Twitter, and I would be happy to try to have more discussion with you guys about the rule of law and about how things matter in your lives. So if you have topics you want to see me cover, please feel free to give me a shout out and make a suggestion. That's about all I have today. I don't want to drone on, so I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Thanks everybody for coming. Please hit the share on the video so you'll share it on Facebook. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, it really helps out if you click subscribe. I really appreciate it. I hope you'll have a great day, and I do hope everybody's staying safe. And if anybody in your family has been affected by COVID, contracted it, I definitely will pray for them.